Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first workshop of a series of 5 on Beethoven's Mass in C from the core studio here in Islington. I'm absolutely delighted to be here tonight and leading this little bit of introducing a wonderful group of singers who I'll introduce in, well, actually, maybe I'll introduce them right now, but they're a bit hidden, so maybe I'll get you to stand up. Clare Lloyd-Griffiths is our soprano this evening. Helen Charlston, our mezzo-soprano. Peter Davoren, our tenor. And Will Gaunt is our bass. And Peter Foggitt on the ivories. So, wonderful quartet tonight. They're going to have a little, well, 3 of them are going to have a little bit of 10-minute rest whilst I get Peter to step forward. And Peter's going to lead us in a warm-up right now for the next 10 minutes. Peter, over to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this workshop. I'm sure we're all itching to get on with singing some great choral music, and this Beethoven Mass is no exception to that. It's a brilliant piece of music. Some things we forget now and again, especially if we've had a long time off of singing, is a word that I'm sure you're all familiar with, and your conductors and each choir and choral societies have said about support. So I just wanted to explain to you a little bit about support and something to be aware of. What I define as support is making sure we engage with our lower abdominal muscles. Now, I most certainly do not have a six-pack, but I do engage my muscle whenever I can when I sing, and there are a couple of things I want you to be aware of. So first and foremost, I want you to sort of raise your hands to the side and just make the noise huh, and feel what your lower abdominal muscles are doing. So if you can now, just go huh, and then relax. Now, hopefully, you should be feeling some sort of pressure just around your belt line, below your belly button. That is one way you can feel that support when you breathe in. Another thing you can do, and bear with me, this is probably for the more flexible of you that are watching. If you're standing up, I want you to sort of bend over like you're touching your toes. And take a breath in from here. So, and then stand up. So what you will feel is that engagement again, but you're also feeling it at sort of the smalls of your back. That is what I define as support, and I think it is the most important thing you can have whenever you're singing any great choral piece. It's the best thing you can do to stop you being absolutely knackered at the end of Messiah, at the end of Bach in B minor, or in this piece, Beethoven Mass in C. So, with that in mind, if I could get my wonderful colleague Peter to play D flat major, and I want you to sing Mi, Me, Ma, Mo, Mu. Obviously, if you're a soprano and alto, sing at that octave. Mi, Me, Ma, Mo, Mu. If you're a tenor and bass, okay? 3, 4. Mi, Me, Ma, brilliant. Before we go up a semitone, did you engage really with your lower abdominal muscles? Did you feel that when you breathe in? Next step for that engagement is to make sure you're feeling that pressure, that engagement throughout the exercise. So you're feeling that pushing just against your belt line. So if we play D major now, we'll try that again. 3, 4. Mi, me, ma, mo. Brilliant. The final thing I want you to think about are the vowels you're singing. E, E, A, O, U. Now, as you're singing them, make sure you keep that energy throughout the whole vowel. You never want to go E, E, A, and sort of fall flat. That's the, I'm sure we've all had it when your conductor will give you an absolute earful saying, it's going flat, it's going flat. It's because we don't engage the vowels long enough. So with the next step up in E flat, I believe we're up to really think about lengthening those vowels the whole way through. Okay? 3, 4. Keep going up to semitone. Keep those vowels going. And one more for luck. Really good. We're not going to go too high yet in your voice because we don't want to go too high when we warm up at the beginning. It's like essentially asking Usain Bolt to start bombing it straight away. We don't want that. Okay? We're going to work on the lower part of the voice now. Same engagement. Could I have a B major chord, please, Peter? Sopranos and altos up there. A, do, re, mi, si for tenors and basses, or just basses if it gets too low. Now the key for this one is, imagine you are staying in the same place as the higher note. This will help it, one, stay in tune, and it stops the sound sagging. We get that all the time at the end of phrases, like, if I was to sing something like, eleison, that's where stuff goes flat. Eleison. We want to keep it in tune. So with that exercise, a, do, re, mi, si. Now it's your turn. And a, do, re, mi, si. And this time we're going to go down the semitone. And down another semitone. A, do, re, mi, si. And two more. A, do, re, mi, si. And the last one. Really well done. Now, this is the fun part, or mainly for sopranos and tenors, maybe not for altos and basses. We're going to look at the higher part of the voice. Peter, can I have an A flat major chord, please? Now, I'm not sure if any of you have sung in French before, but I'm sure you've heard of the French noise on. On. Could you all just make that noise for me? On. Right, the key for this one is I want you to think of that French vowel throughout this entire exercise, which goes, can you play the A flat again for me, Peter? Now, tenors and basses. Now the key for this exercise, as long as you're engaging those muscles, the higher you go up, the more French and the more nasal I want you to get. Okay? So, everyone there, have the A flat again, please. 3, 4. Upper semitone, go. More French, more nasal. Even more French, even more nasal. Three more of these. 3, 4. Two more. And the last one, make it count. Now, really well done, guys. The reason I do that exercise, I should explain, it's not just because I love French noises. It's essentially, we are, what I would say is raising the soft palate. Now, I could go into scientific detail, but I don't want to embarrass myself live on YouTube and getting it wrong. So what would be a really good thing is by doing the French noise, we actually just lift. It just lifts the soft palate. And the more French more nasal we get as we go up, it just raises it and makes those high notes just feel a little bit easier. Now, here's the fun part. Going from an on to an R vowel is really small. Oh, you think of the French nasal thing, helps it get higher. Change from an R to an R. Oh, same R to a oo. It just links everything up. And the key to singing safely and to sing for a long time is to make sure we keep those vowels nice and pure and use whatever tricks we can, especially in these warm-ups, to help us get through it. And I think that's time. Well done, everyone.
Fantastic. Okay. I have to say that was some of the most exhilarating warm-ups that I've ever heard. Having all these voices at the same time, that was fantastic. I was a little concerned that you were expecting all the gentlemen watching to get it quite as high as that, but fantastic. And I think a perfect warm-up for the first thing that we're going to sing tonight, which is the Kyrie. If you'd like to turn to the first movement of the Mass in C. If you don't have the music yet, if you hadn't found the music, it is available. You can download it from the core website, and I put a link, or we put a link underneath the video for that, so you can link to that. The other place you can get it is Encoder, which is the app that we are associated with more for the Christmas repertoire, where we're doing a lot of contemporary music. But you can find out more about that on the website as well. And of course, remember that inspired by these incredible voices, I'm sure you'll want to practice in between rehearsals. And you can practice using core. Core is free, and you'll be able to hear your part sung by wonderful singers. And actually in the recording on core, the bass in that recording is the wonderful William Gaunt. So you can take William home with you. That's our offer this evening. Oh, enough of that. So, before we get into any detail, let's have a sing. Let's sing through the Kyrie, and then we'll go back and look at it in more detail. So if I could have a C, please, Peter. Gentlemen of the basses, are you ready? From the top. Fantastic. What a great start. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go back to the beginning. First off, if we were all in the same room, I know one of the things that we'd be working on and talking about is one of the things that Peter was addressing in his warm-up, is sustaining and supporting the sound so that there's no chance of the pitch going down. And tenors and basses, you have this sustained C going on for, 5 bars there, 4 or 5 bars. Not only do the basses, you need to sustain it and stop it from going flat, but tenors, you've got to make sure that you're a nice octave above that. Any words of wisdom on, well, you started for a start. I mean,
yeah. Well, I suppose the thing about flat is if you make sure that the vowels don't sag, so instead of going you keep it bright. So make sure the vowels don't change too much, I suppose. Keep them. If you actually sing it without the consonants, it can help just to get that sense of all the vowels sort of being one, but you just modify them a bit to keep to the note. So if you go,
which is a great idea. Why don't we take, for the start, let's build this up. Let's take the tenors and basses first, just singing this on vowels. So we're just singing irie, eleison. We're not singing any consonants in there. And let's take it through to bar 11. So we'll take the whole phrase there. That's okay. So here's your C for at home. Okay, just on vowels. Beautiful. Let's do the same thing, but with the soprano and alto line, please. This line. 1 and. Let's try that together now, using the consonants this time, and as Will was saying, making sure that the vowels, how was it, you said you keeping them brighter, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, trying to see them as modifying rather than changing fundamentally all the time. So instead of going,
yeah,
think of a thread running right through them.
So I think what you could hear when we just did the vowels was how they were all making the vowels as related and as similar as possible, like one column of air, as opposed to what Will's suggesting now, that each time a consonant comes in, the next vowel can be drastically different than the vowel that was prior to before that consonant. So this just helps us to stop that. So having tried it without the consonants, let's just try that again with the consonants, that opening phrase. 1 and. Fantastic. Any other things we want to mention in this little section?
Just one thing to add on to what Will was saying is just, even if you get the beginning of the vowel right, that doesn't mean it's over. It's to keep that energy that Will's saying, keeping that thread going. It has to be so. You don't want to go because that's where the flatness usually comes in. Is when we think, okay, job done. You know, but we need to keep that energy going the whole way through the note.
And we haven't even started on diphthongs yet.
There's one other thing, the letter L.
The letter L?
Am I audible? I don't know.
How audible is Peter? That Peter.
Can I be heard? If I speak, am I audible?
Come forward, Peter. Peter,
The letter L is a thing that often does climbs up like that. So people sing tenor, that sort of vaguely Russian way to slip underneath the note, which is a huge cause of flatness among choirs, is drooping L's. Especially when you're going up towards a bit L rather than L like that. I find that happens more often than
you get the throat happening there.
Well, there's the all there, but also L. I think if one always thinks about pitching the L on the note that follows rather than the note that has preceded, which is a good thing for staying in tune. From the point of view of this angsty conductor who's constantly telling people to do that.
Thank you, Peter. And if all else fails, drop the consonants and just sing the vowels. No, that was not a tip. But it is a very good way of practice. Those choirs that have worked with me know that it is something that we do quite constantly to try and think of yourselves like an organ, with a lovely constant flow of air without, as Peter, basically the point of this conversation at this point is how consonants can get in the way and drastically affect the vowel. And of course, it's the vowel that enables us to make music at all. So yes, let's be nice to our vowels. Let's go on. Sorry, ladies, unless there's anything you wish to add to. Okay, we've got lots of things. This is brilliant.
Just from a musical point of view, I think it's always a really good idea to be aware of when your part is moving with someone else's, and really sort of checking in with whoever is aligned with your part. So, for instance, at the beginning, the soprano and the alto have their little duet moments, and it's important that that's really felt together. And then at the end, we all come together in a sort of a tutti moment. So yeah, just paying attention to those moments of synchronicity between parts.
That's really good. I was going to talk about a very similar thing. So that works really well. Well done, Claire. You read my mind.
So being kind to our vowels and being conscious of those who are singing with us at the same time, we take from that. Excellent. So that sing through, I deliberately asked our wonderful singers here not to sing the solo parts. When we sing it through at the end, I will ask them to sing the solo parts, just so we could be clear as to where the next entrance is. Now, Claire, could we talk about accents and vowels getting into words? So this next one, we want a nice accent for Kyrie, but how do we stop the vowel getting closed off by that consonant? How do you approach that? Looking at the bar 23, 24, 25, the B entrance there.
Yeah, so when I approach that phrase, I think the first thing I'm thinking of is actually not the consonant, but it's the vowel that follows that consonant. I know that the K is written first, but actually I find it helpful to think first of the vowel and to get that prepared. And then the consonant sort of, it comes from this support, and it naturally leads into the vowel, if that makes sense.
So you're planning to get on that second beat there, you're going for the E. You're thinking about the vowel first,
yeah.
And
my in-breath, I'm going to be thinking of the vowel and the note that I'm going to be coming in on. And then the consonants just sort of dropped in, and it's going to go straight into the vowel. Maybe it's easier to sing it to demonstrate it.
Well, I think as we do this, and the reason I brought that up and I wanted Claire to talk about it, because we've got the two sort of more, I would suggest, slightly accented entrances of the soprano, followed by the bass entrance on the downbeat. So we've got the ki. So those two parts, I think, are very much aligned. And then in between, we have the soprano and the alto part. So I'm going to separate those two out for now. So if we could take, just take a little bit of a run-in from the beginning of that line, please, Peter. And this is just for soprano and basses. So this is from bar 22. This is 4 bars, or 3.5 bars before the soprano tutti entrance there. So the soprano comes in on the second beat. Bass. Excellent. So now hopefully you see how those two are related. We've got this echo of the kit to the kit crossing over the voice parts here, and how the line is very similar in its shape with those two voices. Before I ask Helen and Peter to sing their parts there, can we just talk about approaches to crescendos? And particularly, I know one of the things I'm always talking about is making sure that we control the crescendo and then don't allow it to disappear too quickly on the diminuendo, so supporting that. So if anybody wants to talk about a little bit about that particular crescendo.
I think if you think about the distance that you've got to go is really useful, and actually that crescendo at 32 is really helpful because we've almost all got 4 quavers. So thinking about the 2 quavers that you've got to increase in dynamic, and then the 2 quavers and a bit more that you've got to decrease is really useful because then you can grade it through those pitches.
So giving yourself a bit of a yardstick for that. And I think even if you don't have those 4 quavers, even if you were to have a minim there, or in the case of Will, he has a crotchet and 2 quavers, you can still have that as your yardstick internally. I mean, you've got 2 types of rhythm, haven't you? You've got your external rhythm, which is the one which is heard, and you've got your internal rhythm, which is the one that we use to hold it together. And in this case, if you were just holding together a minim, your internal rhythm should be those quavers, so that you can place that crescendo and diminuendo over those eighth notes, quavers. Let's take the tenor and the alto line, please. Same place. So this is from 22, but this time just tenor and alto. The second beat there. Okay, let's take everybody, please, from bar 22. So the next entrance is 5 after A, bar 41, Christe, eleison. I would suggest that the biggest, not challenge, but the biggest thing to pay attention to here is what was already mentioned, which is making sure that you're very clear as to where the movement happens, because it really needs to be all together vertically there. Anything else that we need to pay attention on this one? I love your eyebrow, Will. It's sort of the most inquisitive eyebrow. It's like, expressive eyebrow. Let's break this down into 2 parts. Let's have the alto and the bass line here, please, after A. Okay? A nice, big, supported forte. Yeah. Okay, and now the soprano and the tenor. 1 and yeah, be very careful, as you can hear with these wonderful voices here. There's no sliding through those notes in the penultimate bar of that top system there. Particularly in the alto line, I've done this with choirs where we've had to work on not sort of sliding through that F sharp to the E. So make sure it's nice and controlled and not, no portamento of any sort in that. Let's take all the voices there, please. 1 and lovely. Now the next entrance, again I'm going to ask you, Claire, to talk about coming in on that F sharp.
Yes.
And your mindset and the bars leading up to it.
Yeah, Well, before I sing the note, I need to hear that note in my head. And the breath that I take just before I come in with the F sharp, it's really making space for that F sharp in that breath, as well as finding the right vowel shape. So that when I come in with the note, I've already set it up. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I'm also avoiding, for an F sharp and a soprano voice, you need to be making a bit more space at that point. So there's a sort of an opening up, which I experience when I get up into that range.
So opening up.
Sort of, it's opening up, finding a bit more space inside here. It's one of these difficult things to describe verbally.
Yeah, I know, it's a challenge. You know, if we're playing the trombone, you could say, no, it's there, or whatever. You could point to what needs to be done, but the human voice is just so difficult.
Yeah, but I must say, I think if my face looks glum, then I'll struggle. So it's something about opening up the eyes a bit, having a good posture, just not sinking over, you know, all of those things will help.
Yeah.
Those
tell your conductors off if they scowl at you, the higher you get. Yes. Smile when I have to go high.
And I don't want you to open your mouth and grin, but just to find a bit more, I don't know, radiance, perhaps.
And Peter, your sopranos and tenors, similar sort of challenges regularly.
Yeah, I mean, to try and, I guess, to put it into almost like an everyday life thing, that sort of feeling, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is having your favourite hot meal on a winter's day, but you don't want to burn the roof of your mouth when you have your first mouthful of it. It's that feeling. That's a very panicked way of creating that space. But so you want to do that, but without the panic, essentially. Yeah, it's similar for tenors. It's the same thing. It's all controlled screaming, really, isn't it?
Okay, excellent. The other thing that to bear in mind in this entry, of course, is that basses, you also have an F sharp. So you need to make sure that you're listening across to the soprano as well, and make sure that we have that couple of octaves there very well in tune. Can we just take, please, from 45, and we'll take bass and soprano line. We'll go a bit before that, shall we? Go from 45. 1 and... Excellent, we'll just do that much. Okay, let's take everybody now, Okay, so I think that's a perfect opportunity. Let's talk about going into piano after a forte section and not closing everything off, and also making sure that we've got the support so that the pitch doesn't go down. So, Helen, do you have any suggestions on that?
I think one of the most useful things to try and keep in your mind, and it's a really hard thing about those differences in dynamics, is that fundamentally nothing changes when you're going between loud and soft singing. It's just that the dynamic is changing, but the way that you're singing hasn't actually changed. And so if you can encourage yourself to keep that space that we were just talking about, to keep the continued excitement of sound, the continued support, that's really going to help you. And then all you're doing is changing that volume button. You're not changing tens of things at the same time.
So I think that means something to all of us in the room. But the concept of separating out support from volume, I think, is one of the things that people often struggle with, and they close off the throat. And
one of the things that you can practice separately from when learning music is a really useful idea of trying to just find on one single pitch, somewhere in the middle of your voice, finding those extremities and going between them. So going from a quiet sound, crescendoing to a loud and enjoying that loud sound, and then maybe coming back. And the more you kind of play around with where those different types of sounds feel in your voice, I think is really helpful, because then you can begin to access, oh, this is kind of that feeling of my piano, my mezzo forte, whatever you want it to be.
Excellent. Any other words of wisdom on?
Yeah, just to carry on from what Helen said, which is absolutely right. It's nothing changes in terms of that support, engaging those muscles. You just notice that engagement more when you're not making as much of a noise. Because when you have to sing loudly, you have to support. You can sing quietly without not supporting, but there's no fun in that. It's just keeping that engagement throughout, so it feels like you're almost working twice as hard. So in your head, you might think, oh God, I'm really, really focusing on these muscles to sing quietly. But in fact, you're just doing it exactly the same, it's just you're more aware of it.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about that idea that in order to sing loud, it is excitement and everything is going and your body can't not get involved. Whereas it's weird when you're singing quiet because you think, oh, this should be really easy. Well, my body's working really hard, but that's positive, and to kind of, enjoy that feeling of support, I think is really good.
And singing is an athletic activity. So very, very good, I think, information there, and very important for this next section, because we are going to go through some very big extremes of quiet and loud as we go through the next couple of pages. And let's do that now, because we're slightly behind schedule. 1.5 hours is going to go way more quickly than I anticipated, and I want to make sure that we can do the same thing in the Gloria and go through that in sections. So let's take it from let's go from B. Let's go from B on page 4. Take it from there, and we'll go through to the end of this movement. Here we go. Vowel for the next entrance, as Claire was talking about. Very nice. I think before we go on to the Gloria, we have to talk about that last line and that very challenging dynamic markings and how, we approach that, because we have piano, we've got that forte on the downbeat of elei on 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th bar of the bottom system, and then a piano in the next bar. So, first of all, how are we going to go from the E to the lay, LA, to the quiet to the loud, and control that one?
So that's a sudden excitement, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's coming from quiet, which is fantastic. So we can use that real energy to help us find that immediate exciting sound, and it will then be remembering where that quiet feeling is to come back to, which would probably I would find the more difficult thing there.
And there is a diminuendo marked in the accompaniment there. So I think I've always done it where the forte and then just a slight diminuendo rather than, in the score it suggests it's a subito piano, but that doesn't really make much sense. But getting into that LA is, I think, the biggest challenge. Peter, come forward.
I think if I were conducting this, I would probably ask the choir to become louder in the course of it, lean into the start of it rather than subito le, which sounds horrific.
Yeah.
Because you can rely on the orchestra to be louder the downbeat.
Yeah.
And so if the choir gets louder slightly later, I think it's a more comfortable experience to sing. It also means no one has to try any harder.
Yeah.
It also doesn't sound grim, which is the important thing. And then if the choir has lent into it, then it will naturally just get quiet again into the piano afterwards.
Yeah.
That's the thing you could try.
Absolutely, let's try that. Let's take that last line. So we're going to lean into the downbeat, as Peter's suggestion, which is lovely. We'll put a slight diminuendo into the piano that comes after that. And as Helen suggested, we use our excitement as well on the downbeat, which is all brilliant. So this is the final bar from 1, 2, 3. So final line. Fantastic. Okay, I think I've got some. I'm not being rude, by the way, looking at my phone. I'm sort of not checking my. Well, actually, I am checking my text messages, but they are concerning you, you the viewer. Question: any tips for getting volume at the bottom of the range? In my case, the bottom G in bar 1, 2, 6. Other than smoking cigars.
Lean closer to the microphone. Any tips for getting more volume? The only thing I'll say is don't try too hard to get more volume. Just relax, and if it won't get louder, it's not a failing. It might be that you can't sing that note any louder, but don't push it. Just relax it. Let whatever sound comes out naturally without being forced, and it's probably loud enough, I would say.
So actually trying to make
Trying
it
too
louder
hard
gets
doesn't
away.
make it louder.
Yeah.
It just makes it sound like you're working too hard, I would say.
Okay. And work on
Probably
getting more
quieter,
men in your choir. So on that point, let me just remind you that if you wish to ask questions, please do. To join in the chat, join the videos, you do need to subscribe to the channel. So you do need to have a YouTube account and be a subscriber to the channel, but neither of those things cost money. But if you do that, then you can join in live and you can ask questions, and I encourage you to do so. Gloria, I suggest we start this on vowels only. Let's just practice that or, e, r, yes? So here's your starting notes. And without Peter, piano, Peter. Okay. Can we make it slightly shorter? That last, but not too short. That last crotch. Okay, 1 and 1, 2, 3, and 1 off. There we go, perfect. Going on, 1 and. Now that you've made those lovely, lovely vowels, let's try that again, and let's not let the consonants get in the way. Just add a little bit of definition, no more. Gloria. Gloria. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Good. Claire.
Yes.
Talk about that line.
It's going to take support It's going to take energy. Yeah, what I was saying before, get your vowel ready, your or vowel ready with the breath that you take in the crotchet preceding that entry. And then it's a very active phrase, so you really want to make sure you're feeling that connection with your support, because that's what's going to help you to sing all the kind of passing quick notes in that phrase. Yes, energy and support.
Anything to add from the opposite problem is we're not getting higher, but we're getting lower for some voices. I mean, that's starting for some mezzo altos to be quite low.
For sure, definitely. I guess just making sure that we're not, like Will was saying, never trying too hard to kind of feel like we're going into our boots. So I think it's just really important to let those notes be where they want to be, and enjoying the fact that we're mirroring this exact melody with the soprano. So really making sure we're singing through and helping our soprano colleagues as much as we can as well. Provide that musical support as well as physical support.
Excellent. Let's go on from there. We're going to come back to all of this in a moment. So let's take. We'll go from that point, bar 7. So this is from the Gloria and Excelsis. Yeah, the soprano and altos, and we'll go on from there. Okay? And 1. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Gloria, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Good. Rhythm. Dam pa pa bam pa bam pa pa be da da da. So that crotchet there after the dotted min in there still needs to feel that we're all together and we're moving forward to the downbeat of the next bar. Don't let that get late at all. Let's take it from bar 13, please. This is that Gloria. And 1. Gloria, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Et in terra pars pax omnibus voluntatis. Okay, so hopefully you could all hear what a wonderful sort of end to the last phrase was, and then a great timed breath. There was a big breath from Clare for that bonnet, yes? So you've got to make sure the end of that phrase is exactly as it needs to be, so you give yourself the space to take a nice breath there. Anything other than breath we should mention?
Yeah, well, I think your breaths need to be as rhythmic as possible. In that bar, 28, you've only got a crotchet to breathe in anyway. But when you have a phrase that comes in after a few bars of rest, where you don't have to, take a quick breath, if you can still find a way of making the breath that precedes every phrase you sing as rhythmic as possible, that's going to set you up well. It's just another way of accessing your support by breathing in a rhythmic way.
Super. So we take it from there. Let's go from A, please. This is from A. Going on. And 1. Altos and tenors, you have a crotchet there on that tiece, but the sopranos and basses, you're full right the way through to the down. Let's take it to the downbeat of the next bar for that tiece there, so we really make sure it's together. So let's go from that bonnet. Middle system, bar 37. So we have a crotchet rest to take a breath there for the Glorificar. But what are we going to do after the Benedicimus Te? Are we going to shave off a quaver there? What's...
Just take a breath. I mean, that is the answer, isn't it? You can't
Yeah.
take a quaver off.
A quaver
It will be about
you
a
would end up
crotchet, won't it?
snatching it. It really is
Yeah.
closer to a crotchet, probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it's in two. Otherwise, and you catch
You
your breath.
catch it.
Yeah. So the simple answer is Peter's take a breath. Which will probably end up being more of a crotchet than a quaver at that point. Fair enough. So, but anyway, the point is take a breath there. And I think the other point is it needs to be a breath that enables you to get down, reset for the lower note and also for the piano. So if there's any level of tension that comes into that breath, it's not going to help you, is it? So, no. Yes. No, oh, Peter.
So we've got so much music to do, but it's worth saying this.
It's absolutely.
I think sometimes we get into this mindset, particularly in large choirs, that you realise there's all these people around you who are also taking a breath at the same time, and you feel kind of peer pressure to get your breath done as quickly as possible. But actually, when you've just sung, where it is, benedicimus te, ado, you have to sing the note, release, breathe, sing the next note.
Yeah.
And however long it takes you to do that is the right length of time. And if you find yourself going, dicimus te, ado, immediately you're creating tension that is going to screw you over in approximately one note's time. So the release of that, I think, is what I mean by take a breath. That's the right length of space.
So then, in your experiences then, when you're working with a choir of this sort of quality, is one of the things that you learn over time, and with your experience and training, is to feel exactly what you're talking about, so that the breaths become aligned by listening to each other. They're natural breaths, they're going to allow you to reset the voice, but that's part of what makes a really great ensemble, is that you don't have to have conversations about whether they're quavers or crotchets. They're the right breath.
Yeah, absolutely. But also, especially with words that don't start with consonants. So, adoramus te, you can end up, if you snatch that breath, all of a sudden that causes tension sort of around the epiglottis, and that you're just all of a sudden creating an extra bit of tension because you haven't prepared properly. It's everyone is, yes, singing is sort of the same technique, but everyone is built differently. So if you need to breathe for a bit longer or a bit quicker, then that is your way of doing it. It's whatever is comfortable. That's the important thing, especially when you're singing long pieces. Comfort is the key. You never want to feel like you want to be able to stand there doing a Messiah in 3 hours and still feel fresh as a daisy. Yeah. Comfort is the key.
You're only on page 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Page 10. Yeah. We're only, and also, I think in this time of COVID, comfort is the key should become our anthem. I think for in the time of COVID. So thank you very much for that, Peter. Okay, how are we doing? We've got about 15 more minutes before I wanted to sing through these. So. Let's keep going, and as we've talked about that, let's take it from Benedicimus te, adoramus te. Top of page 10, bar 46.
Benedicimus te, adoramus te, glorificamus te, glorificamus te.
Lots of solo-y bits. I'm just going to respond to a message that's coming from Josh. Yes, I will try and use bar numbers as much as possible, or as many markings as I can, because obviously people have got different scores, and if I just go by rehearsal letters, so I'll give you as many cues as I can, or much as information, so you know where we are. Okay, let's go on to the next tutti section, which is the tenor and basses. Let's break this down and let's have the tenor and basses, please. Lots of support, piano, relaxing, what we do, excitement, breathing as is natural, all those sorts of things. So here we are. This is bar 82, which is on page 12 if you're in the Novello score. And let's have the sopranos and altos, please. The same, or the bar later, bar 83. 1, and. Fantastic. Everybody, please. Bar 82. The tenor and basses, and then sopranos and altos join Good. Let's take the next entrance, which is 2 before C, or bar 97. Bar 97. Deus omnipotens. 1, and. Let's take the 2 outer parts on that. Let's take the soprano and the bass line, please, at that bar. 1, and. Make sure that we arrive on the downbeat there, please. Let's take the soprano and altos now, please. 1, and. And 1. Good. Basses and tenors. 1, and.
Deus omnipotens.
Everybody. 1, and.
Deus omnipotens.
I would like to hear more of the tenor and alto lines coming through that. So if the soprano and altos, soprano and basses, good strong entrance there with Jesu, come away slightly, and then more from the altos and the tenors, please. That's what I would like. What would everybody else like at that point? Sounds good? Okay, let's take that then, please. So let's go, please, just a couple of bars before that, please, Peter. So 102, 103, bar 103. Very nice. It was lovely, that Christe down there. Okay, let's go on, please, to D on page 15 in the Novello score, or bar 121, bar 121. Let's have the basses and altos, please. Okay, let's have the others, tenors and sopranos. Sopranos, bearing in mind, you have got to make sure there's enough puff for a very long C. We'll talk about that in a minute. Here we go. 1, and.
When I breathe in for a phrase like that, I really expand my ribs quite a lot. So I'm really breathing into my back, first of all. And then at the beginning of that part, so bar, where that long note begins, bar 129, I just straight to the vowel, get a vowel that's spinning, but just spinning in an economic way. And just keep the dynamic the same, but with the sound still travelling. It's easier said than done. Things that can help you, listen to the harmony, be aware of how your note is acting in a harmonic way, because as the harmony changes, my C goes from being a fifth to being a tonic note. And yeah, all those things can just help to sustain your interest through that long note.
Excellent. Let's take everybody, please, from that bar, please. Lovely. I just love all the sort of operatic nature of this piece. It's wonderful. Okay, so we've got syncopated rhythms there in the accompaniment. Ba, ba, ba. But if you only focus on the syncopated rhythms, you're not going to be syncopated. Focus on the beats that are on the notes that are on the beat. The boom, 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 ba, bum, ba, dum. And also make a note of which notes are on the beat and which aren't. That's the first thing to look at that. Any other suggestions about that little section in particular as far as any... I mean, it's challenging coming out of that extended solo. So, and also, I think too often in amateur choirs we get very focused on our guest soloist for that day. So we must allow that out to happen. Anything else?
It's also not just keeping the energy in when we're singing, it is in those rests as well. So we're really playing off whoever the wonderful soloist may be on your occasion, your choir, when they're going, it needs to be, imagine it as a continuation of their phrase. It just so happens you're singing it. So don't be so gobsmacked that you don't sing, essentially. Keep that energy, as much energy as the soloist is having, and it should really help with the energy of that first syncopation anyway.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we also need to decide upon as a group and as a conductor or whatever is where we're going to put the emphasis in that word. Is it going to be miserere? Is it going to be miserere on the downbeat? And how much do we put the emphasis on the downbeat? And I think Peter's probably got an idea on this one. Go on.
Do I? I think I've probably got two ideas.
Yeah, go on.
It's okay to have two ideas.
I think Beethoven has.
Exactly.
The first thing is that the M is a thing that invariably holds back the vowel. So if that M is already basically happening on the quaver rest that precedes, so one, miser, there, the vowel will be syncopated correctly. If you put the M on the syncopation, then the vowel will be too late. The other thing is that the stress is on the third syllable, and I think Beethoven also puts it there. Yeah. And actually, some of us who've had the pleasure of working with the Monteverdi choir will know that the conductor of that group has two different vowels in Latin for re and re. Miserere, like that. So the last syllable is even lighter because you make that last vowel. Yeah, which isn't necessarily to everybody's taste, but it certainly does something for the phrasing.
But it helps also to emphasise the point that we've just made of that re. Okay, lovely. Super. Let's try that again then, please, Peter. From 145. We'll take it from 145. Just a couple of bars before that entrance. And we're back into solos. Lovely. Lots of lovely, lovely solos. Qui sedes, please. Top of page 19. Yum bum 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 bum. Let's start on that downbeat, please, Peter. Very good. Okay, let's just take that section from. Let's take it from the top of page 20, or bar 183. Bar 183. And let's break it up. No, actually. No, let's go back to F. Let's go back to page 19, 73, 74, 75. 175, just the basses and tenors, please. 1, 2, 3. Qui sedes ad dexteram patris. 1, 2. Miserere. Fantastic. Do the same thing, sopranos and altos. 1, 2. Qui sedes ad dexteram patris. Super. Everybody, please. Same place. Same without accompaniment, just voices. Same again. Qui sedes ad dexteram patris. Excellent. Let's take this next little bit. Let's take the sopranos and altos from the Miserere 189, 190. from the tenor and bass entrance, please. This is bar 192 for the tenor entrance. Everybody. Bar 190.
Sancto Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris. 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 Doniam tu solus sanctus. Jesu Christe. Sancto Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris.
so next week, we've got 10 minutes left, so I think we should sing the Gloria up to maybe, well, it's up to you. Do we do the whole of the Gloria or we do up to the last bit? Because I want to look at the croning out at the beginning of next week. Whole thing or up to croning out?
I don't mind either way.
Either way? Okay, we've got 10 minutes. Why don't we sing the whole of the movement? Let's finish the night off. And next week we'll look at that final section in more detail, but at least you'll have a sense of it now, having gone through it a couple of times. So, all those lovely things that we've learned this evening, let's put them into practice with the Gloria, all of the Gloria. So here's starting notes. This is ready?
Is Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris
Sancto Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris Sancto Spiritu Amen. Sancto Spiritu in gloria Dei Patris
Doniam tu solus sanctus
Jesu Christe
Sanctus, tu solus
Thank you very much. Thank you to our wonderful quartet of singers tonight, and Peter for his wonderful piano playing and erudite interjections. I hope you've enjoyed this evening. We will continue where we left off and move forward into the Credo next week. If you are looking for more opportunities to sing, tomorrow night we start a 5-week exploration of Handel's Messiah, and next Monday we have a wonderful program of Christmas music from the 20th and 21st centuries, and we'll be starting with Gustav Holst's Christmas Day next Monday, Monday the 16th, but you can find information on that at core.app, and hopefully you're inspired to go away and practice these wonderful pieces now, and of course they are in Core, so please sign up to use Core. It is free to do so. And what else do I need to remember to mention? Join our Facebook group. We want to get to know you, and we can only get to know you if you chat with us. So some of the things we want to know is what's working in these workshops. This is new for all of us, doing online streamed rehearsals. We're having fun here. We hope you're having fun out there. We'd like to get better at it, so please do give us feedback. The other thing is, from a core perspective, we're looking to find out what choirs are thinking of doing over the next year, and how can we support you and your choirs in getting back together in 6 months or a year's time, and in between supporting you staying together online. You know, we are a community already as choral singers. We have our choirs, we have our wider community, and we just want to celebrate that and do what we can to help us through this time of COVID so that we can stay safe and stay singing. So take care, and I hope to see you all again next week for more Beethoven Mass in C, tomorrow for Messiah, and Monday for some Christmas music. Thank you very much. Good night.